Hello, my name is William James and I've attempted to record this video 5 times, and it's been a very hard thing to do because A, I don't want to deal with people in the comments telling me I'm wrong, but also kind of looking at this series and trying to compare the Wheel of Time TV show to the books is extremely difficult. I checked out of the series in book 4. I gave up because I don't like the books. I don't think they're very good. There are far superior fantasy writers. And this is how the show feels. Because of the weak source material, they've obviously changed things up and tried to push things in and do it. The characters in this show, even though the characters are... again, these are problems with the books, but the characters feel very shallow in this show. There's no way that the characterization is very good and the world building isn't very good, and the overall cheap appearance of this show. When it looks pretty, it looks pretty, but when it looks bad, it looks bad. And I have seen better costumes at Renaissance fairs, which I find interesting. Also, the way they've moved key parts out of the story is not great. So what they've done is they've taken elements and flashbacks and all of this and pushed it into order, and I get they did that with Game of Thrones, but it feels very much they've changed the plot to burn through the story much quicker and unnecessarily so. And it does spare viewers from the endless jumps that are in the books because there's lots of POV shifts throughout, but it doesn't work. So technically the Wheel of Time takes place in a post-apocalyptic future. The novels hint at this timeline and setting, and they're details that are easier to miss, and you see the TV show actually does this better, and that's a thing that I'm interested in. The TV show actually does it better because you actually get more of a feeling and vibe and energy of this. You see it makes it blatantly clear, but it also spoon feeds the audience its story, and this is another problem. Because it's boom 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 in storytelling, it's spoon feeding the characters and story in a way that isn't necessarily a good thing, and it kind of burns through it. You have a world that it could be very interesting on screen, but it doesn't work in the narrative of how they're doing it. They did age up the characters, which actually, to be honest, with actors that they tend to cast, that makes perfect sense. And I can forgive that in terms of this, just because it's actors. You know, 30-year-olds playing teenagers in horror movies, you know, it's that symptom. At least they don't pretend. They've also changed one character gets a very controversial new backstory, and I'm not going to go into too many things. But it just doesn't work. They've changed the characters to the point of unrecognition in many cases, and the motives of the characters don't line up with the changes to the story. This series has made me extremely worried about what's going to happen with Lord of the Rings. And it just makes me feel like, well, what are they going to do? How are they going to ruin this? How are they? And, you know, the Silmarillion, and I have problems saying that word, by the way, the Silmarillion definitely isn't much there. I've read it cover to cover numerous times. It's a history book with no real story. But what are they going to do to this? I think they tried so hard to create something. They tried to create something bigger and better. But in doing it, I feel like if maybe Jordan had been alive, it wouldn't have happened this way. And that's the thing, I cannot like the source material and enjoy things, but I do wonder how they're going to deal with this. At the end of the day, you create something, and a lot of fans aren't overly impressed with this series. and a lot of haters of the books aren't overly impressed with the series. And I feel like if there was a way to tell this story, and I know how I would do it, and I would literally copy from Game of Thrones flashbacks and flash forwards, put them in a linear timeline like they did with Game of Thrones, and partly certain elements of Lord of the Rings story. That's how to deal with this. The only thing that I will give it, two things. I love the costuming. I think the costumes are really cool. Trying a little bit too hard, but cool. But they look cheap. I have seen better costumes at Renaissance fairs and cosplayers. I mean, there are plenty of people that could do this super cheap and make it look good, you know. It doesn't necessarily have to cost the earth. And I will give it, the one element of the world building they get right is the elements of the, how can I put this? The elements of the backstory, the post-apocalyptic world. I just don't know how they're going to deal with this thing, because there's a lot of books, there's a lot of stuff to compress, and I think they're trying to compress the story as much as possible so they can pack in case they decide to can it, so they can get to the end much quicker, or tell an original story, which I don't think is necessarily true. And I feel like the creators wanted to create a more original story, but I don't get it. I think they could have done something really special with this, and there was a way to create the show and they just didn't do it, and it's left me very worried. I'm hoping the Lord of the Rings doesn't look this cheap. I really do. There are fan series that you should watch that are fantastic, that look really stunning, and they've been shot on like an iPhone made an iMovie, but this doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the narrative. It feels compressed. It feels rushed. The story pacing is all over the place. The characterization is a mess. And overall cheapness of this show. There are better shows. There are better fantasy stuff. But that's my opinion. And I know I'm going to get hate for this. But anyway, tell me what you think in the comments below. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.